Welcome into this special edition here at Sellout Crowd because the bat signal has been put out. We have some breaking news today. Danny Stutsman, he did the old Uno reverse on us. He's coming back to Oklahoma. Guerin, Emig, and Eli Lederman are going to join me to discuss that. We are brought to you by Oklahoma Ford dealers. Ford is the best in Oklahoma. You can drive into your best in Oklahoma Ford dealers today for all the best deals on Ford's full lineup of trucks and SUVs. Guerin, Emig, Eli Lederman, you two are with me. Let's start with you, Guerin. What was your first thoughts when you saw the news today on Danny Stutsman?
Good for the Sooners. When it appeared that Stutsman was headed for the pros, which we measure in days, right? It was last week, wasn't it? Everything runs together this time of year. I reacted with a selloutcrowd.com column that stated whether Stutsman or anyone else, the experience is everything when it comes to Brent Venables' defense, because that's the side of the ball that's more important right now, especially as OU moves into the SEC. And that's the side of the ball where it takes a little longer to figure things out when you're trying to decipher Venables' codes. And so since I wrote, Billy Bowman's announced he's coming back. Danny Stutsman now announces he's coming back. So this benefits Oklahoma deeper than any one player. This is a system that's at stake here, and Oklahoma will do better in that system with key players coming back, and Stutsman is most important of all.
Eli, I don't know if it meant anything or if it was accidental, but I thought it was interesting in the little video that Danny Stutsman put out. He's coming off the plane, a little bit reminiscent of Brent Venables coming off the plane a few years ago in Norman.
We have not hit on. We got to hit on the news part of this first before the analysis. Let's go back to last week when the report came. It was Sooner Scoop, and I think their reporting was accurate, but that Brent Venables was informed by Danny Stutsman that he was going to the pros. That's why this is such a big deal. For the last week, people have been expecting the tweet from Danny Stutsman not to be I'm coming back, but I'm going to the draft. Here's what I'm going to do for the Alamo Bowl, and I'm going to be gone. And so you're right, though. The morsels were there over the weekend. I mean, Danny was posting things on Instagram. Even this morning, it's Monday, posting an empty locker. So, some of that proved to be just another troll job from Danny Stutsman. But you mentioned the video with Brian Bosworth. They went big here in terms of announcing it. There's not many bigger Oklahoma linebackers you could associate yourself with in making that call. And while Guerin is absolutely right that this is about something bigger, the system, getting Billy Bowman and Danny Stutsman back is so big for the defense next year. There will not be a bigger piece of offseason news for the Sooners than Danny Stutsman making this decision, because we know how important he was as easily their most productive defensive player the last 2 years. We know what kind of an emotional leader he has been, and we know what the Sooners look like without him this year. The second half against Kansas and Bedlam, they missed him dearly. And as much as Brent Venables said it in Stillwater, they didn't see a drop-off. A week later, he turned around and talked about how important Danny Stutsman was. So as we're projecting for 2024 and a defense that without him was going to need to go get someone in the portal, that the options it didn't look like there were a lot of Danny Stutsman caliber guys in the portal. This is just massive for the Sooners.
Eli, I would assume this means he's going to play in the Alamo Bowl, right?
I would think so, and I can't imagine that when we're in San Antonio, Guerin and I, on the 28th, that there's going to be much of a bigger ovation for any Sooner starter than Danny Stutsman.
Guerin, you talked about this mixed in with the Billy Bowman news. I know it's hard to really answer these questions, but it just kind of by your guesstimation, how much do you think going to the SEC may have affected this move, and how much do you think NIL may have affected this move as well?
Well, SEC comes to mind first. Did both players not include SEC in their announcement?
I believe they did.
Yeah. So it's getting we're getting closer to reality here, is what we are. As much as Oklahoma has been, what matters is where our feet are. They've got at least one, if not one and a half, into the SEC now. It almost feels like Texas is representing, put it this way, the SEC as much as the Big 12 in the playoff, and so. Absolutely. The idea of you want to test yourself in what we all think is the best and baddest football conference in college football, that hits home for these guys. It's a recruiting draw. It's an NFL draft draw more than anything, fellas. Who puts more guys into the league than the SEC? Nobody, and it's not close. And if there was an element of the NFL in the Stutsman story, that is the initial report that he was going to inform Venables he was headed for the NFL draft. Well, what better proving ground in terms of draft stock than to be a linebacker and to come downhill and meet an SEC tailback in the hole then in that league. And so for Stutsman in particular at his position, as much as it is for Bowman, the importance of OU's future home, I think can't be overstated.
What about when you throw in NIL, Eli, and also just in general, Brent Venables? This is a pretty big get for him. It's like a recruiting get now, right? When you retain a player and keep them from either going early or transferring in the portal. What early returns, obviously, do you like what you've seen from the Sooners and how it seems like they've been able to use NIL to their advantage in not just getting players, but retaining players?
Yeah, there's been some sentiment out there, maybe just, internet stuff and simply down to Stutsman in the time where people thought he was leaving. But any sense that the Sooners are not operating pretty heavily in NIL and well positioned in NIL? I mean, it's all relative. There's Alabama, Georgia, maybe Texas in some area, but then Oklahoma's there, and I'm certain that was a part of this. Maybe, I'm sure Danny had a lot of deciding factors. If at any point he made up his mind that the NFL was his choice, then there had to be some unraveling to get him here. And I doubt it was all about the money, but there's no getting around the fact that for both Billy Bowman and Danny Stutsman, NIL is a factor. And these are guys who, whether it's, you're comparing what they might have made next year in the NFL, or simply if you're got the emotional strings tugging on you to stay in school and maybe your head says NFL, what helps the heart on that is NIL money. There's no getting around how big that is. And then you talk about elsewhere for the Sooners, they're going to make moves in the portal. And if they are going to be going up against other big programs, which they are, you look at everybody they're recruiting, they've got offers, they've got visits to other major programs. NIL is going to be a big part of that. So it's helpful in retaining your guys. I think we've seen that. And it is going to be helpful in the portal where they've still got a lot of work to do. But I think they're going to be pretty thankful they don't need to look at linebackers now.
I mean, how can you pass up a chance to play at Faurot Field in Columbia, Missouri as well if you're a guy like Danny Stutsman? That had to be a big part of the equation, right, Guerin?
I'll ask him about it next time we see him, how much of that was central to everything.
I'll put it this way: if we were aching to talk to Seth Luttrell for the first time since his promotion to offensive coordinator, I think everyone on the beat, Eli and myself included, are going to be actually more anxious to visit with Stutsman now. Again, to get the insight on where he was in the process, because it had to be a process, what kind of feedback he got, and what specifics are involved in his return. Fellas, I'll add this: there's a real factor I think related directly to Venables, in that this is a coach who endears himself to defensive players. It's been that way since he first started up with Bob Stoops 25 years ago in Norman. It's not easy to play for him, but if you can get through that first hump, get over that first hump, you love playing for him. And if there are going to be stay or go decisions to be made by the likes of Bowman and Stutsman moving forward, if there is anything that can break a tie in terms of a relationship with a head coach, I think it helps Oklahoma that head coach endears himself again to defensive players. It's sort of like when Lincoln Riley was coach of the offense at Oklahoma. Whether it was a personal relationship or a track record he had, especially with quarterbacks and scoring points on offense, if you were trying to decide what to do with your future as an OU offensive player under Lincoln, then sticking around so that he could help your future, not to mention what he meant to you personally, sticking around what wasn't such a bad option. So again, not saying that it's going to make every decision a slam dunk, because not everyone's going to play the roles that Bowman and Stutsman have worked themselves into under Brent Venables. But for those players who play top level roles, Brent's personal relationship with these guys is going to be a huge factor.
Two things I would just say. I think keeping Billy Bowman and Danny Stutsman kind of proves what Brent Venables wants, which is that he's running a program that is relational and not transactional, that you can keep guys that have been there for a couple years and that they want to stay and buy in and be a part of the program. Also, happy birthday to Ted Roof today, right?
How about that? You think that's why Danny stayed for today? That's surely got to be the reason, right?
Yeah, that's the whole reason I think Danny Stutsman saved it for today. It is big news. We want to first of all thank Jacquelyn Musgrove, Michael Lane, Michael Martin, Bobby Howard, all of our production team and creative team for getting this thing up for you to check out. Also want to remind you of a couple things. Number one, you can check all of us out, whether it's Mind Games with Guerin Emig, the Lederman Jacket with Eli, or the Todd Pod on YouTube or anywhere you get your podcasts. But also be sure that you bookmark Eli Lederman's portal tracker. Everything that goes on in the portal you can find over at eli-lederman.com. I know Guerin and Eli will both be down at the Alamo Bowl, keeping you covered. Again, thanks to all of our crew behind the scenes. Congrats to Sooners fans today. You get some good news, and happy birthday to Ted Roof right here on Sellout Crowd.